Welcome to GLCast, the official podcast of GLProUK. GLProUK is a London-based creative studio working with a diverse range of companies, individuals and brands across multiple platforms to provide a wraparound service for the digital content creation requirements. My name is Greg Armstrong. I'm head of digital marketing here at GLProUK, and this is a very special episode of GLCast. Our managing director, Jay Ludgrove, who usually joins me each episode, and Tony Gordon, our creative director, were recently invited by Gotta Get Blogging over in Orlando, Florida, to take part in a special webinar. Gotta Get Blogging were doing a special month where they deep dived into podcasting with lots of great presentations, events and webinars. This webinar was moderated by Justice Mitchell, who is the man behind Orlando Pride podcast, Queenscast, who we actually produce here at GLProUK. Jay and Tony are travelling to Florida at the end of September to not only attend Gotta Get Blogging's Florida BlogCon, but actually talk at the event also. The Florida BlogCon takes place September the 29th, 2018 at Full Sail University. For further details, head over to floridablogcon.com or Gotta Get Blogging's Facebook page. We're going to play the audio from the webinar video where Jay and Tony talk podcast production and how best to budget for launch and moving forward depending on your goals and resources. Enjoy.
So, hey guys, everybody, I just wanted to reach out real quick. I'm going to turn it over to the guys over at GNL. It was very serendipitous. We had developed Queenscast and had been running for approximately 1 year and doing it ourselves, kind of really figuring it out on our own, which we hope we've given you a little bit of insight as to like some ways to do that as it talks about gear and hosting and things like that, but not really the production end of it. And I got to tell you, when it comes right down to it, the things that I didn't even think about were all of the things. There's this, the old joke in the movies and in television, we'll fix it in post. We'll fix it in post. That's all, that's all you ever talk about. But in a podcast, it's very much the same. And it really, really does become very much a laborious process if you're consistent about it, because you have breaks, you have snafus, you have little things that you have, little moments, clicking on the mic, something drops out, whatever the case may be. And to have a really, really high-end pro group of production professionals like GNL is well, it's a luxury. But at the same time, it's not something that it's not something that it can obtain. It really, they've been great to work with. And I literally kind of raised my hand in a couple of podcast groups as to like, is this even a thing? Is somebody out there that can help us do this? And they stepped up, and I'll let them take it from there. Tony and Jay of GL Pro in the UK, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jess. This is a lovely intro. Lovely intro indeed. Well, look, I tell you what, as you're in control, if you could start the first slide.
Ooh, slideshow.
Indeed.
It's nothing complex, and anyone that's seen Justice's previous slideshows may recognize parts of it.
Yeah, Tony may have appropriated some of the good stuff. Not that it wasn't all great, but just the stuff that's kind of appropriate to us. So first and foremost, the who are we bit. I'll keep it short and brief. So he's the G and I'm the L, essentially. I don't know which way that'll do an L. So Tony worked at Microsoft for an awful long time, and I used to work in high-end IT sales. And we've been friends for 15 odd years. Poor old Tony. So we actually started our own podcast. And within about 6 months, we were nominated for Best Podcast in the World. We didn't win. And
it was a European podcast thing, so I don't know why they...
Yeah, it's kind of like your World Series. Like a lot of people weren't involved. We, like I say, we didn't win, but we were happy to be nominated. And one of the things we found was that essentially Tony has the smarts to do this podcasting thing, and that it's really fun when you can bring podcasting to people. So we started GLProUK, and what we literally do is help people without the technical know-how, or even who do have a technical know-how but don't necessarily have the time, produce podcasts. So they get to do the fun bit like we're doing now, the talkie, and then they send it up to us, and Tony and his team get to clean up the bits and make them look pretty.
The fun bit.
The fun bit, as he says. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it all spurred from that, and it's come so far now that we're doing a million different things. We've got a video team here with us now as well, but it all comes back to this podcast. It's all about content and reusing that content as much as possible and making as much content from everything we do. And yeah, that's that's us.
And we're real champions of social media. Part of the company that we run is an international social media management company. And we work with kind of brands and businesses all over the world, helping them kind of utilize the power of social media. And one of the things we love is the fact that you can take one piece of content and release it on every platform available. You can make a video, you can release a blog, and you can do a podcast. But out of all of those things, podcasting is absolutely the easiest and probably the best way to get out there across the board. So that's us in a nutshell. And Justice, if you could go on to the next slide, please.
Yeah. And I guess this leads on to this. The best thing about a podcast is it's budget efficient. Like, you can do a podcast with any budget. You can have nothing and just use your phone and start there, or you can have a full-blown studio and spend the world getting the perfect thing and spend like all the time in the world in production and post, and that there really is, the scope is full. But what we want to talk about today is, based on what you have and where you are and what you want to do, where do you come at it? What is my budget, and what do I do with that budget? Where is it best spent? And so, yeah, this is something I threw together quickly but it is basically the 3 tiers of, there's a lot of overlap in these tiers. I'd say, you can be a professional where we've got a hobbyist, which is, your low level, I want to start a podcast because I love pigs. And I can't find a podcast about pigs. So I wanted to go down the farm. I interview pigs every week. I do a different podcast, and it's just a passion of yours. You don't necessarily have an audience for it. There's not necessarily a sponsor there, but you're just doing it. That doesn't mean you can't do it. And it doesn't mean you necessarily need us, but it does mean you might need a few pointers that you fit in. That's where you'd fit in. As a pro, there's a little bit of an overlap here, but if you're a pro, it's more like you have an existing audience, you've got some advertising already, or you're getting to the point where you're thinking about some advertising, or you have a good enough idea to commit to quality early and be like, we're going to go in, here's our budget, we're going to spend some budget day one because we know this idea is...
Essentially, you're going to put, to be the tier 2 that Tony's got there, to be a professional, you're putting a bit more of an investment in. Tier 1, you probably have the tools available, you've got a phone or something. Tier 2, the professional side, you're putting a little bit of an investment in to get that level of quality up.
Yeah. And on that level, you could just put your phone down in front of you, press record, or you can get loads of attachments to your phone, in the very low range. So, like, as we go through today, these are the 3.
What's the third one, Tony?
I'm calling that sponsored. And that's more where you are coming in with if Virgin Media, that's an English brand. If AOL called and we said, tomorrow we want to start a podcast, and they just want to hit the ground running, they've got the money and you want to spend to get it right. That's kind of where I'm sitting you there.
Or the hosts of this great month on podcasting, or the sponsors, Queenscast, for instance. Right. Queenscast is a sponsored podcast. They have, a backer who's helping them get the real great quality that they've got. And obviously with that means that they have a few more options. So we've broken the entire of today down into these 3, because although, as Tony says, there's a lot of overlap, you kind of sit in 1, 2, or 3, depending on who you are. And usually 1s want to become 2s and 2s want to become 3s, and 3s there's an awful lot of breadth there.
I just wish I had enough time to be at 1 again.
This is it, absolutely.
But yeah, I think that's about all I need from this slide. If you could, please, Mr. Justice. Right. This is similar to one of Justice's previous slides. Essentially, here we're going to talk about 2 things. It's equipment and fitting that equipment to the environment. There's no point in you buying the best equipment in the world if you don't have if you're not recording in the place that's actually going to utilize it. Equally, if you've got a great room already that has a great sound, there's no need to buy certain things to diffuse the sound, and when we get into post-production and those kind of things. Similarly, there's a lot of options here. So what we have here is, I will go over Justice's those, as we said before. If you've got just a phone and you're sitting in tier 1, and you don't want to buy any equipment, but you've got a blog and you just want to essentially make an audio version of that blog, which I would absolutely recommend you do. If you put out any content, you should put it out on as many different platforms as you can. And it's easy enough to just get a little lapel mic, or even just your iPhone headphones, record it in your phone, or just put the phone on the floor in front of you, on the table in front of you, and just record it. You might need to do a little bit of tidy up, but it's it's a good microphone. These phones these days have better microphones than we had in the studio 10 years ago. You know, it's within reason.
But what Tony's saying there, a little bit of tidy up is very easy for him because he's a professional. But if you're starting out, then you want to try and get the best quality sound you can get. So getting something like a lapel mic, where you're attaching it there, like you see newsreaders have, or any interview on TV has, is going to increase the sound than just having your phone sat between two people and hoping it's going to pick everything up. So in that first tier, you can kind of see for like $50, you can get a few different attachments for your phone to greatly increase the overall sound quality.
I haven't got it to hand right now, but once this is over later, I will post the Amazon wish lists, which go with each of these tiers. I don't have them to hand right now, but I'll make sure they're up on the comments later, so you can have a look, because there's a few different options of what you could buy within that. Then so yeah, if we go through all the equipment, and then we'll talk about why certain equipment works in certain environments. But your next level up is actually what we're using today, because it's so portable. It's a Zoom mic or something to this, something like this. And what this is a built-in recording interface that has a microphone built in. It has the ability to record on the device itself onto an SD card, or you can plug multiple other microphones in. You can power microphones like this, and you can plug it into a computer and use it as an interface. So it gives you the best of both worlds without having a full studio load out.
And it's a game changer. It really is an absolute game changer. 5-10 years ago, when the Zoom wasn't around, you literally had to go to a studio to get this kind of like recording ability.
Yeah,
now,
the only alternative we used to have was a Tascam, which is the classic brand that all film companies would use. But that was not Tascam. Now have some cheap ones, but that wasn't an affordable alternative. That was what film crews had to use because they didn't have a studio with them. So that was the only.
But audio is very, very rare that it was this mobile. Now, as it says on the slide there, like $250, you can start out and you can get yourself a Zoom, and you can literally. Listen, one of the podcasts that we've edited in the past was a truck driver who drives through the States and sits down with other truck drivers. And, he sat by the interstate and you just go, meow, kind of flying past. But he's literally as mobile as you can be. And having a Zoom means that you've got near studio quality. If you make an investment in mics, like you can see that we have, you've literally got studio quality kind of anywhere you want to go.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I think is important to understand too is to do yourself the service of listening to other podcasters sort of within your genre, sort of to hear. I mean, a lot of the times, especially when you first come out of the gate, you may not know that you don't sound good. You may like. I mean, for instance, Tony and Jay and I have had a number of meetings on Skype and online, and I've been at home, and my house is tile, and it literally sounds like this, just this echoing giant chamber, and it doesn't sound rich, and it really sounds tinty and so forth. At the same time, too, you get other podcasters that like to do live things live. And if they have a single unified mic, then they'll pick up a lot of ambient audio. They'll have pick up people yelling in the background and things like that. You may not know that it's the old, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So it's like one of the things that I think is really important is you have given us progressive insight over the course of the years that we've been together about, not only simply about the kind of quality of product that we utilize, but how we utilize that in the way that we speak and the room that we use and what to look out for. So if you could outline a couple of things that people may not even know that they do, like, smacking their lips or clicking their, tapping the table. I mean.
And those are great things. And that actually leads on to wear headphones. He says not wearing headphones. But if you wear headphones, those things like the tucks and the clicks and the tapping the table and all these things, which are absolutely things to be aware of, you hear them. If you're wearing headphones, you know what's happening, and you as soon as something goes wrong, if you're not close enough to the mic, if the guest's not close enough to the mic, you have that advantage of knowing exactly what you're doing. But equally, recording in a big empty room, you might think, great, there's nothing in here.
Perfect.
That's perfect.
Wonderful.
That's exactly the opposite. I mean, the last thing you want is big open walls with nothing on them like this. Again, great example. Or basically, if you're in a big room, you're better off piling furniture or like putting rugs over things and just creating, as with this diagram down here, if you see, it's only a very simple one, but a flat wall, essentially the sound bounces straight back at you. And the more interference you can put on that wall, the more you can, the sound disperses, and you don't get that reverb. When you're in a terrible room with loads of flat surfaces, you can really hear it. It sounds like you're in a bathtub almost, and you get that constant just echo almost.
So try and choose your room. Go into the room, and one of the easiest ways to find out how the room is go into it, make a noise. Okay, cool. Right, so we got a little reverb. So maybe this isn't the place to stand. What happens when I go closer to the wall? You see a lot of podcasters on the groups who have made themselves sound booths, and basically it's
a really good idea.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like soft furnishings essentially. If you grab a comforter, put it over something, and then talk into it, and you'll hear how there's no reverb or anything bouncing back at you in the sound, and that's really what you want. You don't want the sound to be anything apart from this. The other thing is mic etiquette. As you can see, Tony and I are like staying by the mic. If we're over here, it sounds different. And it's going to pick up that ambient noise that Justice mentioned. But trying to keep the mic sort of this far away from you and staying in vaguely the same place is going to make it so much easier for having a consistent sound throughout your podcast.
This is also a really good housekeeping item too. When you are working with an individual, set up some sort of housekeeping rules before you start to roll and cut your piece. Having suggestions as like kind of let them have their headphones on, they can hear themselves and give themselves a little bit of distance as where they can see where that sound dissipates, so they know how close to be and so forth. But I think that's also real beneficial. It's one of the things Justina does with anybody that comes on the show is a few minutes just to get them comfortable with the equipment.
It also gives them a time to relax. Like people will freak out once a microphone's in front of them or a camera's in front of them. Yeah. Giving people a little chance. And also, we don't hear our own voices enough. It's good now everyone's recording everything, so we all hear ourselves a little bit more. It's not like 10 years ago when you're like, oh man, is that what I sound like? But giving people a chance to sit there with the headphones on, talking to you, and a moment to relax, have a coffee and talk is always much better. It's one of the reasons I really like long form podcasts that go over 3 or 4 hours, because after an hour, everyone kind of relaxes into it. And you can hear the second 2 hours is just a normal conversation because everyone's a little uptight for that. But spending some time pre going live to kind of relax your guests and also get those little bits in is so important. But I'd also suggest don't be afraid. Like, don't be afraid mid-podcast to say, hey, come closer to the mic.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise people will get in a habit of then just sitting back here the whole time. And it sounds terrible and just sat there being like, oh, I hope we can fix this.
Even if you've got someone on the mixer live, turning it up as the person sits back, you're just increasing the ambient sound and therefore making it more difficult to get that sounding good in the long run. It's one of those.
It's why a podcast host job is difficult. Not only do you have to keep a podcast running and be entertaining, but also you have to try and think about what's going to happen in post. Like, is this going to work? And are you getting everything you need? So, if I listened to a podcast recently with Mel Gibson on it, and the podcast host was like, Mel Gibson was on my podcast, and he was clicking a pen. He was clicking a pen, but he was like, what do? I tell Riggs to stop clicking a pen? But he literally at the beginning of that podcast then went through and said, look, I'm really sorry. I didn't tell him to stop clicking the pen. I wish I did. So, be absolutely confident in the fact that you will get a better end product by being kind of upfront about those things and saying, hey, come a bit closer to the mic. The guys can't hear you. And then people will freak out a little bit and then stay nice and where they should be in the pocket where the sound's great.
And a bit of a 911 if you have, like most of us do, we have an old iPhone or any type of maybe old recording equipment. Kind of honestly, you just never ever know. But if you have a second recording device, you can just sit on the table. It may not sound great, but I know that we have saved many a show when a disc got full or a mic went out we were unaware of or something like that. We were able to pass that off the GL, and they could extract from another source. And while it wasn't 110%, but that wasn't their fault. We gave them something that was inadequate compared to what the normal studio is, and then they made it happen. But at the same time, if you have a little piece of recording equipment, or you go to a bigger system, like we went to a bigger Zoom mixer, but we have the smaller Zoom, you could set that on the table as well.
Yeah, backup upon backup upon backup. I mean, Tony's like Mr. Backup guy. We've got about 7,000 mics here just in case something happens.
Maybe a little too much. Going back to your earlier question that we seem to have evaded just this, though, little things to avoid doing. And this might seem obvious, but take your time and
breathe.
Think and breathe. And I say that in the sense that from an editor's point of view, it's if we're going in and we're going to cut ums and breaths and things, we can do a lot more with space. It's a lot easier to cut space than it is to cut someone panicking, if that makes sense. So I don't know, obviously once you're in that panic stage, we all get there, we've all been there, especially when at the beginning, it's difficult to pull yourself out of it at the time. But if you just think, if someone's doing an edit job, even if it's yourself, when you come back to it later, it's much easier to just cut the big gap where no one's saying anything than it is to kind of stifle through every little bit and be like, oh, we're going to cut this bit, we're going to move this bit here to make it to kind of make sense of someone having a little panic. And I think that's a good thing to include in your house cleaning at the beginning as well. Just give them some coffee, tell them to chill. I know that doesn't necessarily work with everybody.
Also, gum, no.
Yeah.
Phone on the table, no. Okay,
phone on at
all. Like, just like, it's one of the things. If we're going to sit here and do a podcast for an hour, then give me the hour, because otherwise people will be sat there and be like, I'm sorry, Justice, one more time. You don't want that in your podcast. There's tons of times when halfway through a podcast, someone's phone starts along the table. Right? You don't need that. That's going to get picked up by the mics as well. So having like a checklist, setting up a little checklist beforehand of like, do this, do that. We used to do it every single time. We used to make the same silly jokes off air every single time. I mean, I did because I've got like 4 jokes, but just to like calm the guests down and get them into it and explain the setup of the show and kind of get them used to or ready for what's about to happen.
Quick 101 on directional mics versus indirectional mics.
Ooh.
Sorry for the touch. I would have hated that. I would personally, we use omnidirectional mic, these vocal mics, which are, well, they are omnidirectional. However, there's a preference point in these NT ones rather than some of the other ones that are fully omnidirectional. Whereas the All Seeing Guys, which is Greg, who works with us, who gets an excellent sound, just uses vocal SM58 stage mics and gets an excellent sound with that. So I think it's more about your environment to a degree. If you've got a particularly reverby, if you've got a problem with the room, like the room is, you can't do anything about it, it's where we record, I would go with your more directional stage mic, like a Shure SM58 or one of the
stuff you see Metallica singing into.
Yeah, because that's only picking up what's right in front of it, and it gives you that option of basically killing everything. You're only picking up that little bit. Whereas if you've got a nice room or you're working out of a studio, you want the best possible sound, and that's where something like this, this is a Rode NT1, which is like the cheap end of your good vocal mics. But I love these. For the price, these are the best thing on the market for a podcaster, I would say.
And the difference would be, if you think when you saw Frank Sinatra singing, and he'd have the mic down here because he had that ridiculous pair of lungs on him, and he'd have fantastic control. So he'd sing like that. But when you saw him sing when he's recording, then he's in a booth and it's one of these mics. And the difference is that you want to pick, if you've got a perfect sound and there's no reverb or anything like that, you want to pick up every last little bit of it. Whereas if you have a directional mic, it's only going to record there. And as soon as you come off, it's going to sound like that, basically, as soon as you talk away from it.
Equally, you're going to need one mic per person, 100%, if you're using a directional mic, whereas you can kind of we could probably get away with one mic in this situation if we put it between us. Yeah, I'm greedy, but...
He's greedy.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the last on the tier of equipment there you got that time?
So, yeah, I started saying, I mean, that would start with these. It's kind of the bottom end of that up to what I would say the top podcast Rogan and all those guys use, which is the Shure SMB5 or BFP? Yeah, I can't remember. I'll put it it's on the Amazon list, but it's a beautiful mic. The SMB, it's the only thing I prefer to this, but for the price difference, I don't think it's I would buy 4 of these instead of buying one of them.
Also, when you're getting up to that level of microphone, you're really getting into the position where you're going to want a producer
and you're gonna
on site. Yeah, you're going to want someone in that environment playing with it because it's going to pick up so much. Yeah. These are really nice because it sits in that kind of middle area, the tier 2, the pro that we were talking about, where you can get great sound. But we've recorded all kinds of places. We've recorded in...
But that's the mobile option, right?
Exactly. We've kept it really mobile.
Whereas this top tier, I'd say you're looking at buying a mixing desk or minimum you can get. Even at a low end, for about $200 these days, $250 maybe, you can get a full 8-track like M audio. I don't know what the Zoom 8 or 12 track one quite is costing, but we'll pop it on the list. That I'd say you only really want that if you're recording in the same place every time. You want to walk in and not have to set everything up, or not. Maybe you've got to pull it out and set it up, but you know your environment. You know that you're going to have more than 2 or 3 people on the show sometimes, so you need the depth of recording. And at the end of the day, it's not necessarily, other than giving you more options to plug in inputs, you're not getting a better sound necessarily from a desk than you are from the Zoom, the handheld Zoom, in terms of using the same microphone.
But it gives you a lot more to play with if you know what you're doing.
You do, and you've got more knobs. So it's if you do have a producer, and I say that you have someone, there's more options for them live to tweak it as they're going. That and headphones and headphone amps play a massive part at this point as well. We don't have one right now, but if you're using headphones, you need to have a headphone amp.
Yeah.
If there's more than one of you, because most devices don't have multiple headphone outs. You can get a splitter maybe and just do it that way, but as soon as you have more than 2, you're going to get in trouble. So
headphones were a game changer for me when we first started. The reason that we can do this now is that we're planted in the same spot, and wild horses couldn't move me from this spot. After a few years of podcasting, I know that this is where I live right now. I live here for the next hour, and in an hour I get to move in other places. But headphones were really big. I have a ridiculously loud laugh. Did not know until we had headphones, and I'd see Tony be like, "Oh, cool," as he tried to turn things down. But having those headphones on,
also always, every time he's like, "I can't hear myself." I'm like, "Absolutely can."
That's more of a narcissistic problem than anything else. But actually, having headphones and hearing what's happening is. It sounds really obvious, but it's huge. So just to recap, equipment-wise, essentially spend what you can. I'd really suggest investing in a Zoom pretty early on, because it's going to last you an awful long time. You can sit in that middle tier, the professional tier, for a long time, and then start to add other pieces of equipment as you go and build off of that. Check out your environment. Think of the room you're going to be in. If you're going to be in the same place every time, then great. If you're going to be in different places, then give yourself half an hour. Give yourself an hour to check out the room and hear how it sounds. Put those headphones on with a mic and go, "Oh, I didn't realize there's an AC unit there, which turns on periodically every 15 minutes. And my lovely sound all of a sudden sounds like Vader's in the room or something horrendous." And try and think about that. And as Justice said, definitely before hitting record, go through a little checklist of things with people to make life easier, and do think about mic control. Headphone will help, but
even if everyone doesn't have headphones, make sure you've had a listen at the start.
Yes.
Just make sure that just that one time, even if you're not going to wear headphones, just make sure as you press record, you put them on, you're like, "I can hear everybody."
This is it.
That's the worst, is when you're an hour in and you're like, "Oh, that wasn't even plugged in."
Oh no, we lost Justin.
One of the things too that I think is important if you start to work with a production team such as yourselves. I mean, one of the things we try to do is it helps you guys if we as the producers of that content also construct a sort of our own set of rules for the people that are producing the show. One of the things that we try to do is like we'll pause if we know that we've screwed something up. We will write down the time as to that moment and include that when we ship over the voice track, because we'll be like, okay, we were all like we just we messed it up, or if you use profanity, such as we don't use profanity on our show, but given that you do, like we note that so that can get clipped. If you do have a tapping and or a click or something dumps down or make a note of that. And then also too, one of the things we have is interstitial advertising. So we'll also reference. We even talk to the guys. We say, hey, Tony and Jay, we're dropping in a spot. We're at 26 minutes, yada, 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 this, that, and the other thing. This needs to be such and such an advertiser and so forth. So from a monetization standpoint too, really construct that environment in a way that is also beneficial, because it really allows them to do the most with the show.
And if you were producing the show yourself, because look, we're huge advocates of everyone becoming a podcast producer. If you have the time, then do it. It's good fun. I've never done it. I don't find that kind of thing fun. Like, I'm not good at that kind of stuff.
And it really depends how long it's going to take you, and B, how valuable your time is on other things. You know, if your time is more valuable doing something else, you should get someone else to produce your podcast.
That's it. But by giving yourself those kind of notes that Justice is talking about, and saying, okay, you know, we knocked over coffee 3 minutes in, we could make a little note of that. Even if you're doing it for yourself, or if you've got a team behind you doing it, then it's, you know, if you've got a team behind you, you're going to pay less, because we're not going to have to spend the whole thing listening to it and then making those notes and then go back and say, okay, 3 minutes, coffee spilled, cut out from here to here. It's much easier working to a little brief. But if you're doing it yourself as well, you will save editing time to have to record the whole show, listen to the whole show, make notes, then go back and edit again. You know, you'll speed up the whole process, and you don't want. I see a lot of people in the podcast groups being like, "Oh, it only takes me 7 hours to edit my show every week," and I'm like, "You've got 7 hours a week to spend editing? Like, wow, that's fantastic!" You know, one of the benefits of working with a podcast production team is the fact that we're good. So we're actually very quick at it, and we're releasing so many podcasts. There's tricks, and essentially,
it's amazing how much less stressful it is working with podcasters than musicians, for instance. and like, but it's a different challenge when it comes to audio, but it's a more refined art, and it's just practice. At the end of the day, you just got to do it. If you've got the time to start, you just got to keep doing it until you get good, because it's the only way to come at it.
Yeah, really is.
That leads me nicely on to, we should probably crack on with these slides, because
absolutely
we're going to run out of time.
Okay.
The next slide is similarly broken down into 3 tiers. I personally, and this does vary, if you're doing the production yourself, as we're advocating you should, I would spend, if you've only got a small budget, you're only going to spend $50 on your down payment for the podcast. I'm just going to record it on my phone. I've just got $50. I'm going to put it in. I would spend that money on simple plugins, because that is, if you're going to do it, that is and we'll go into which ones.
Wait, Tony, what's a plugin?
Okay. A plugin is a piece of software, third party, or might come with your DAW.
Wait, Tony, what's a DAW?
A DAW is a digital audio workspace. Basically a piece of software like Logic, Audition, GarageBand, Audacity, as we've got listed up here. Essentially, Audacity is a free DAW. It's great as DAW. If you don't want to spend any money, it's absolutely perfect, and it runs most plugins. Most third-party plugins will run fine on it. So don't spend money there if that's the only money you're going to spend. Back to what I was saying. GarageBand is, I think you might get it free in the US, and we have to pay £10 for it, or £5 for it, which I'm appalled at. But, it's great. It's like Logic Pro X Junior is essentially what it is. It's just a simple one that explains what it's doing. But then if you were to step up to Logic, for instance, which is Mac's own brand pro end software, it feels very similar. All the buttons are essentially in the same place, and there's a familiarity there. So if you were looking at moving forward slowly, you might want to look at GarageBand, and then later on I can buy Logic, because it's the natural progression.
Now, from watching the guys work, because again, I don't know any of this stuff. I did talky bit. I never know how to do things, but editing is editing. So if you learn to edit on Audacity or or GarageBand, you're going to be able to use those skills. However, much like we were looking at in the same thing with the equipment, the more you spend, the more you're going to be able to do. And if you fall horrendously down the rabbit hole like Tony has, then you can get to the point where you're using, the best software out there to edit your show. But also then you have a thing called plugins. What's a plugin, Tony?
Plugin is a potentially third party or not extra bit of software that you'll then, so you've recorded a few audio tracks or one audio track. It's post-production. you can use them live as well, but we won't go into that. It's a post-production tool. So all the way from just a basic EQ, which is I want to turn the high end up and let the bottom end down and tweak to a basic compressor, which just expands sound quite well. Expands the wrong word technically, but it makes sound louder without just adding gain to it. All the way through to a bunch of different noise and like denoise and de-reverb plugins, which they're the ones I'm more going to talk about now, because they're the ones that, if you have nothing, I think they're where you should start, because they're the ones that get rid of the really bad stuff.
So to make sense of that, in case anyone's not as smart as Tony out there, which I'm sure you all are, I'm being condescending here, and you can all send that in the comments. Jay's so condescending. But you can buy specific plugins for specific jobs. So if you have a crackle, if there is a crackle in the background, or if there's a lot of noise in the room, you can buy a plugin specifically that is built so you can turn it up or turn it down and fix that problem. That's a very, very simplistic way of putting it, but there's a plugin for everything.
And as with all things, there's scales to the complexity. So there's simple ones that have just a single knob. It's a noise plugin. It's a single knob, and you turn it up, and it gets rid of the noise. It kind of does at a certain point, and you have to use your ear at that point to be like, I'm turning this up, and now I've gone too far, and I've degraded the sound beyond. So that's at the end of the day, that's as simple as just you have to trust your ear and get better at it, because it's just a one knob one. That goes all the way up to thousands of buttons that all tweaking the high end. We're going to pull this out of the high end and do this in the low end, and we're going to automatically pull out breaths. And there's all kinds of things you can do at the top end of the scale with plugins. If you at this point, I don't even know how many thousands of dollars I've spent on plugins. I don't want to know.
I know. I know. Oh,
I know that if I'm going to start buying thousands of plugins, I'm just going to hire you guys. Which is
and that is one of the benefits of working with a good production company, is that you know, they
spent the money.
Yeah, they well, either already spent the money for funsies like Tony, or no. But you know, the more times we come up with a bad piece of sound, you know, we create a lot of video here as well, and sometimes you're filming in a terrible place, audio wise. So we have to get a specific plugin to fix that. Well, that means we have that then. So you know, Tony's library of plugins is huge, and thankfully he's got the smarts in here to say, wait a minute, back a year ago, I bought a plugin which will fix this problem for this bit of sound. And, you know, things like Skype, Zoom, as powerful as they are and as strong as they are, sometimes the sound can be horrendous. And having a plugin can literally mean you can slide.
One of the things I think you did is you hit on a really good point is, and we talk about this within constructing content all the time, is the idea of constructing something great once and then repurposing it. So one of the things is, and I'd invite bloggers to understand that if you're constructing a great podcast, say for instance you're interviewing a fan or another person that is within your spectrum like-minded, not only do you have them in that podcast, but you can also take that clip of them and repurpose that as a testimonial. Or that could be a social post or a little bit of a snippet that you might utilize as an interstitial intro to something else. Like, hey, you're listening to Queenscast. This is X, Y, and Z from yada yada. But that kind of thing can be redone. So one of the things, too, when we talk about scripting, when we talk about scripting next week with John Terry, that'll be something that you guys want to keep in mind is like, you know, how do you develop content that might be able to go beyond just the point of that particular episode? But I think what you're saying is what you're saying is obviously, you know, the better equipment, you'll be able to repurpose that audio for multiple instances.
And listen, right now we're doing exactly that. Say hello, Simon.
Hi, Simon.
There you go. So over there, we've got a Simon. He's filming this because we're going to release this on our channels. We're also recording this as a podcast as well. Once we have that, we can have someone who can transcribe it, and then we can have a number of blogs come from it as well, which we might not do because this is so long, and Tony and I quite clearly like to ramble. But you know, we're going to use this and drop it a lot. The video is going to be made a promo, which we're going to use leading up to when we come over to see you guys later in the year. And then also we're going to release this podcast for the same reason as well. I think it's so important in such a content-heavy world is to take one piece of content and make sure it's done on or able to be used on every single platform. And one of the wonderful things about a podcast is it just shoots out to all of those places for you. You know, it can go onto YouTube immediately just by clicking post. It can go onto iTunes, Stitcher, Acast. You can have show notes in there, which essentially could be a blog. And then you've got all the content basically just clicking once. I mean, okay, there's a little bit of stuff to do before you get to publish it, but it's all released in one go.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Get back to plugins quickly. I'm not going to run through every single plugin.
He loves the plugin
because that would be long. But do look at these 4 companies at the bottom. If you're only going to spend $50, go to Akusanos. They have the simplest one knob plugins for the 3 to 4 things you're actually going to want in a package that's about $50 when it's on deal. If that's all you're ever going to buy that with Audacity, because that's if you're doing it yourself, obviously. All of these different companies, Plugin Alliance, Isotope, and Waves, all have free trials of sorts. Waves less so because they know that they've got the market. That's where you spend your money if you really want to. they like to charge lots of money, Waves, but they do build the best plugins. They're the established center of the market. They have an excellent restoration pack, which if that's all you're ever going to buy from them, I'd recommend that as well, because getting the crackle and the noise, they have a hum, a wonderful hum.
All right. So Tony could talk about this for another 3 hours. He loves plugins because it makes his life easy. So if you're going to create your own podcast and you're going to be, you know, editing it yourself, buy plugins. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to speed the whole thing up.
If you don't want to do that, then that's your podcast.
Oh, now he's a sales guy. Maybe I should edit a podcast. Right. So what's next time?
I don't know. What's the next slide, Justice? Oh, yeah. Other things.
Other
costs.
things.
We're talking about budgets. So if you're going to start a podcast, you're going to need to host it somewhere. That is the one cost, even if you're just recording it on your phone and you're pressing go. There's all that everyone has a cost for hosting. I don't know actually.
Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. No matter who you are, you're going to pay for hosting.
And you might correct me now, Justice. Was one of those apps that you had on your deck last week actually free, or were they all paid to pay?
No, I believe that. I mean, I think in all capacities, there was some instance where you had to pay for some amount of hosting costs.
At the end of the day, they have to host the data and post and push it out over the RSS feed. So
we looked at Podbean and Anchor as 2 phone-based ones, but there are definitely varying costs and varying levels of complexity based upon what you intend to do. So
now we have no affiliation with them, but we're huge fans of Libsyn. Yeah. Mainly, they're not necessarily the cheapest. They're not too expensive.
Per megabyte, they're very expensive actually. If you're gonna look at it per megabyte and then look at anywhere else you get storage space from, you're like, whoa, that's expensive. But it's what they do.
Yeah. It saves so much time. You can link all your social media channels to it. So just when you hit publish, it also sends out a tweet. It sends out a Facebook post to say, hey, check out my episode. Here it is. It shoots it to iTunes, Acast, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, 1,000 other places, YouTube, more importantly, all from one place. And a lot of the hosting sites do that as well.
Blueberry's great. Spreaker's great. But Libsyn have never let me down. And Rob at Libsyn, who's one of the guys, I think he was the guy that was there at the start. He's still there. You email him, he'll email you back immediately. He's so helpful. They genuinely are very.
But you have to sort that out. That's not something that your podcast production or you can do yourself. Well, you can host it yourself if you're technically minded, but
you could put it in a server in the corner of the room and host it at your house, as long as you know how to set up, how to make it propagate to your RSS feed and your XML and all the. Basically, a bunch of stuff that you don't want to have to do unless you already know how to do it.
Yeah.
There's no point in me explaining it.
We'd suggest use Libsyn.
Yeah.
Music.
It's important. Licensing. If you're going to use music, make sure it's licensed. The worst thing ever is to use someone else's music that you are not allowed to use, and then you're hugely successful and and you can't use that.
For some reason, podcasters seem to think it's okay to use music. Oh, sure, but I can just use a bit of that music, right? And the answer always is, do you own it? And the answer 99 times is no. So don't use it. We all have musician friends. We all know how hard they work, and we all know that not many of them are hugely successful. Only the very small percentage of people make it to where they're Scrooge McDuck and swimming in money. So don't steal people's music. There's a bunch of places you can go where you can get licensable music.
You get what you pay for.
And you get what you pay for. You can spend like $34 and you can get some elevator music, or you can spend hundreds of bucks and get something bespoke made for yourself. But it's,
largely as well with podcasting, because it's an online platform, all of these places have an online license, which is not your TV, radio, broadcast license, which is thousands of dollars. It's much more in the hundreds of dollars range, because they know it's for less than 100,000 plays over the internet or whatever it is. And so they're ready for you.
Yeah.
Essentially, they know you.
Here's the important bit: if you use someone else's music, Facebook will just not allow you to be on there. It'll just pull the feed. Yeah. It'll just pull the feed. So all that hard work you've done,
YouTube will mute the audio.
It'll mute the audio, or you'll make loads of money and you owe it to the guy who wrote the music and owns the music. So just don't do that. Okay, just don't steal music. Use licensable music.
I'll say, and I'll even jump in a little bit further and talk about one of the times that Justina had actually gone to the draft for the NWSL and was in the process of doing some interviews and so forth. And the ambient music that was in the room was getting picked up by the mic, and that ambient music was licensed. And by the time and to us, we actually had good equipment that we could actually kill and knock that out. But the actual show that was being produced for the NWSL was being pushed to YouTube, and YouTube ended up shutting down the feed because it was picking up the ambient licensed audio. So be forewarned that this is a real thing, and they're going to treat it in a real way. And if you're relying on that content, that you could be subject to, at minimum, a cease and desist, which would nuke your content. So.
And something really to consider if you're recording out and about, if you're going to a cafe or a bar or anywhere like that, it's very difficult to ask them to turn off the music so you can quickly do an interview. You don't necessarily think about it until you're there, and it can be quite important as justice.
All right, from a timestamp, we have 10 minutes, but we have one great slide after this too. I want you guys to keep on going, but
this last little bit, we've already talked about production versus your time to a degree. Don't waste your time if it's valuable. If you've got nothing to do, produce it yourself. Learn, spend the time getting.
It's great.
Software. The only reason I wanted to put that in there is because if you are a content producer, you might already own an Adobe Creative Cloud license. So this comes back to the actual software you're using. If you're already using Creative Cloud, you already own Audition. So you wouldn't need, it's something I felt it's worth mentioning because a lot of people probably already do have Audition, don't even realize Audition is Adobe's version of Logic or Audacity or whatever. And so if you don't waste money on subscriptions, if you're already paying a subscription, essentially.
Don't pay twice if you don't have to.
Last slide then. This one's kind of all the stuff.
Is there any comments at all there, Justice?
Yeah.
You know what, interestingly enough, one of the things that we have had it has been, well, first of all, it seems like everybody is enjoying it and that it is informational. Talking about the cost and expenditure, but everybody seems to resonate with what you're saying. One of the things that people have brought to our attention is Amazon Prime's deal days are coming up, obviously, to look at, be forewarned that you might be able to be, pick up good mics at a little bit less expensive price, and also just do your shopping online as it pertains to not only the mics, but the software and other sort of ancillary pieces. So more cost effectiveness, but
yeah. Waves, for instance, never buy anything from Waves if it's not on deal.
Yeah,
because they have a 70% off everything.
It'll come back round. So also, Tony will post a couple of different links for equipment. So yes, those deal days are coming up. Or wait until Black Friday or Cyber Monday or whichever one it is. But Tony's got a couple of full-on lists, which is everything from stands to microphones to the recording bits and pieces. Yep. So you can go on Amazon and just click the bits you don't have and go. Right. So we've got 8 minutes left. Yeah. So let's slide through the things to think about.
Justin talked about this and Jay talked about this a little bit last week. I think John's going to be probably talking about it a little more next week. So let's not waste any time there. But it is something to consider at the beginning, because if you're just starting out, you're going to have things other than you're just recording the show that are important. The bumpers, the intro, the outro, and all these kind of things. And you need to think about these things in advance because otherwise you'll be wasting your own time. The show's meant to be out tomorrow, but I still haven't recorded the intro.
And having that show structure will allow you to put together that checklist that we've been talking about, and knowing, I have to record an intro is a very important thing.
Yeah. So basically, it brings the question, are you going to record it? Are you going to do your intro every week, or are you going to have a generic one that you use every time you don't re-record it, and you just make sure you intro the show at the start of the show?
Yeah,
I always recommend that.
Quick questions. What as far as like thematic music as well that's royalty free, what companies do you like? A couple, give them a shout out. And then also too, I know that for instance and I know this is sometimes the bane of everybody's existence, but we utilized our open voiceover from Fiverr at the time. She has gone since and left and is doing her own professional stuff, and we followed her because we love her so much. But at the same time, talk about a little bit about maybe cutting a voice for your show as an opener.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something you want to get right. You want to do it once and get it right. In terms of the licensing, in terms of free music, I think in terms of free licensing, I always forget I think it's freesound.org is very good for free license noises and bits and pieces.
Also free music. Let's go back to that musician, say, hey, can I have that track? Can I use that track? Get them to send you an email, get them to say, yes, I own this. And you can use it. But if you know someone who writes music, there's always a budding musician out there. There you go. There's a free track that you can probably get your hands on. But if you're going to buy it, where would you go?
I go bottom end. Somewhere like audioblocks.com is a great one because you can sign up for a license for like a yearly subscription and access all of their library. And the yearly subscription is only about $70, I think. That's if you need lots of different things. If you need a one-off piece, Shutterstock, who will do our lovely, placeholder images and stock images. They have a fairly decent stock music collection for the like under $50 range.
Yeah.
As it goes. Audio Network is the one I recommend. They're a little bit more expensive. You're probably talking $100 if you want the full song, 3 minutes. But you can also from them purchase just a minute snippet or this bit of the song or this bit of the song, for
which is great.
Price.
It makes you really
and they have artists that they fund their songs. So they'll go to an artist and be like, we need this type of music. We want to put you on here. We'll provide the recording time. So you get a better quality for your bucks there. Let's say that's
we've utilized Premium Beat, which we liked quite a bit too. Similar in instances, they'll have like a 2 minute and a 1 minute, a 30 and a 15, which is kind of inclusive, which is really, really nice because as you start to find that you monetize or do like intro pieces and other things, you'll start to sit there and go, while it's great that you have this 2 or 3 minute clip from wherever, but then all of a sudden you're like needing to find these other time ratios that you haven't really thought about. So something to consider. So again,
Premium Beat also have a very good blog for audio production. If you're going to do your production yourself, that's I found that company via their blog, which is it's what they wanted. They succeeded.
So intros and outros, bumpers, this is everything you're going to use in the beginning and end of the show. This comes down to show structure. Think about, if you want to monetize at some point, you're going to have advertisers or sponsors, then, have a space for that. If you're going to have someone else do the voiceover at intro, great. Find someone with a great voice, make sure they record it fantastically if you're going to use it week in, week out. And in that, what is your call to action? What is the point? If the point is, back to Tony's pig podcast we were talking about earlier.
Curly Tails, he called it.
Curly Tails. Damn, that's okay, well, we're going to go and start that in about 3 minutes' time. So...
You did use the term Scrooge McDuck earlier, so I don't know. That was awesome.
This is it. So, but what is your call to action? What do you want people to do? If it's Curly Tails and you want people to listen next week, great. Or you want people to follow you on social media because you're going to be releasing blogs. And as Justice was saying, you can take this one piece of content and release it a whole different bunch of places. Then make sure you say that. It's amazing how many times that we get a show delivered to us and we're like, they didn't say the stuff. They didn't say the stuff at the beginning or end. No one said, follow us at GLProUK. No one said it. And then we go and try and steal it from other podcasts.
He didn't say his name. He didn't say his Twitter address. Who was the guy?
Yeah. So thinking about your call to action beforehand and just making sure you tick that box is super important. And you'd be surprised how many times we're like, I can't believe they haven't used that. What do we do? We're lucky because we usually have a library of someone's work where we can go back and take something and use it again. But make sure you do it every time. Say what you're trying to say. If you want people to follow you or you want people to pay something, tell them to do it in every show.
Right.
What else do we have? House cleaning, we've covered.
Live streaming. Only thing I want to say is don't do it day one. Make sure you you absolutely should live stream, but you want to have one problem at a time. Get confident at speaking first and recording, unless of course you're just doing it on your phone and that's all you're ever. If you're just going to stick to that simple setup, then fine. But
tech wise, it can be a problem. I have a Tony. You don't have a Tony, so get good at what you're doing. Oh yeah, okay. Justice has a Tony, but even then, not in the room.
Justice has a Justice. Jay has a Justice.
Jay has a Justice, right? We all need our if you're going to do it. So live streaming, we've seen like some real horror shows. Don't necessarily do it from day one because it can cause a real extra problem. It's why there's those, Saturday Night Live is Saturday Night Live, right? Because it's live every week. It's only one of those shows that does that. Everyone else is pre-recorded so they can make a mistake. So,
we've got 1 minute. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions? Q&A.
Last, well, I could just say, it seems that, and I've been getting great feedback, but most of it is very much in support of what you guys have been saying. And I think a lot of people have been seeing this as extremely beneficial. One of the things that's going to be incredibly nice is everyone that is watching today, please tell everybody else that you know that found this beneficial, that you get to meet Tony and Jay live and in person at Florida BlogCon because we are having them there, which is super, super exciting for me. We've gotten to know these guys. But never had a face-to-face other than this kind of face-to-face, but we're super excited to have them. I can't thank you guys enough for coming on the show. This has been awesome for us.
It's been a real pleasure. We'll try and make it less rambly when we come to see you guys and leave some space for Q&A.
All the time in the world. Ramble.
Any questions on any of this, just drop us a line on Facebook. You know where we are with the GL Pro guys or me or Jay. You can find us all in the links.
Yes, please go and follow them online. They have multiple podcasts as well that I highly recommend. So definitely jump on there, get to know these guys for sure. And we're going to be quick shout out to everybody this Friday too. If you have an opportunity, come to Magruder Lake Division between 6 and 9 this Friday the 20th. We're going to have a podcast panel and a little opening network session from 6 to 9. It'll be a good time. But at the same time, guys, GNL Pro, as always, Pro, thank you so, so much.
Anytime, sir.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much, guys.
All right, guys, and we'll speak soon. And thank you so much. And please, guys, ask them questions. They will be at they're here to help you out. So jump in on this thread or contact them online at Facebook as well. So we'll see.
And I'll stay online for the next 10 or 15 minutes as well. So hit us up, guys, and I'll reply there as well.
All right, thanks a bunch.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to GLCast, the official podcast of GLProUK. Be sure to follow us at GLProUK on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and find us on Facebook. Thank you.